But Desmond, I got to kick things off because something's really been burning me up. Like
Tell me about it.
more so than usual. Okay.
Okay.
What if I told you that there's a chance that 69 million women plus more people might lose their right to vote? What would you say to that?
I would say it'd be a big day for the Republican Party. It would be a big day for them. Yes, it
You
would.
know, when I first heard about this story, and this is going back now several weeks, there's that naive part of me that still exists that I'm like, this can't be a thing that's going to happen. This couldn't
Right.
actually happen. Why would we want to do this? But here we are. And so I want to read you something from Forbes, and this was from today. And they titled this "How the SAVE Act Could Impact Married Women and Other Voters." The Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, the SAVE Act, would require people registering to vote or updating, that's important, their voter registration to show documents in person proving American citizenship. In theory, these requirements might seem reasonable, but in reality, they're going to be a huge barrier for millions of people, most of them married women. For example, 69 million women in the United States have taken their spouse's last name. So what does that mean? It means your birth certificate doesn't match your legal name, and that creates hurdles when registering to vote or updating registration. So to your point earlier where you were like, this is a good day for the Republicans, it actually might not be, because I bet you there are probably more married Republican women that took their husband's last name than there are Democratic women. I'm just throwing that out there as a
Yeah.
plausible
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
theory. Just curious. So when you hear this, do do you think that this is something that could actually move forward in the Senate? And we can get into more of the details, but just, you know, overarching feelings, because for me, the fact that it had advanced in the House and four Democrats supported it is so disgusting to me, and one of them being a woman. Um, I was just shocked, because to me this felt so extreme that I thought even the Republicans won't do this. But here we are.
I mean, Natalie, what
I know. No,
is
I
there actually a line where the Republicans won't do something?
know. No.
I truly don't believe that there is.
Yeah.
Will it go through and make it through the Senate? Well, because it's not something that affects the budget,
I don't
it
have an
has to
answer.
go through what they would call regular order.
Mm-hmm.
So it does have to get that 60 vote threshold. So you would
Yeah.
need to have 7 Democrats in the Senate go along with this. Will 7 Democrats go along? I don't know. I think previously I would have told you that I couldn't believe in any way, shape, or fashion that Democrats would vote with Republicans to pass their extreme agenda. And yet we've
Mm-hmm.
already seen it happen here a couple of times.
Right.
So I don't know if Democrats are tacking to the center for ideological reasons or because they have always been that way and now they get the chance to actually be more of who they are, or if there's corporate money involved here. But I don't know anymore.
Yeah.
Whatever the reason may be, I don't know anymore. And so I don't know what's going to happen when it gets to the Senate, but I do know they need 7 votes from Democrats to make this happen. Now, it is going to be, as you were saying before, it's going to affect upwards of like 70 million plus people who could be impacted by this.
Mm-hmm.
Republicans have an advantage with men
Mm-hmm.
overall in America,
Really?
right? Yeah, you surprising, right?
I wouldn't have known.
So being able to attack their voter group that doesn't really vote for them is going to be a boon for them. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what this really is about. Because as we talked about previously, there's already laws on the books that prevent
Yes,
non-citizens from voting in federal elections.
that's right.
So you didn't need to make a law for this. And as everyone has shown, I love when John Oliver does these deep dives on this. When
Mm-hmm.
they talk about stop the steal, when they talk about voter fraud, it's all bullshit.
It is.
Excuse my language here, but like
Listen, it's Friday. It's okay.
it's right. We have seen the
Mm-hmm.
evidence come out where it's like 0.0001% fraud that
Yeah.
they find every single time. So this has never been about finding fraud, because
Right.
let me tell you, whenever they find an example of anything that they don't like, Fox News will plaster it on their televisions every day, all day. When the stock
Mm.
market was crashing the other day, what were they talking about? They were talking about a trans player playing pool in the UK. Like
Cool.
whenever they find any
Cool.
story
Cool.
that fits
Yeah.
their agenda, it will be nonstop coverage from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. So let me tell you, if they
Hmm.
actually found voter fraud, we would never hear the end of it. We would
Listen.
never hear the end of it. And so it's not there, because if it was there, they would have shown it to us.
Well, I
So
couldn't
this is
agree.
not about that.
No, it's not
Sorry, go
about
ahead.
that. No. I couldn't agree more. And, I have to say, I made the mistake of starting to post my video content to Facebook. And
Uh-oh.
I know, RIP. But I started doing that thinking, oh, I'm just curious. What does this base of people think about this work?
Yeah,
Because we know it's older, it skews more to the right. Holy
right.
hell, like the amount of men that attacked me for saying that this will disenfranchise female voters, it was
Right.
astounding. And then I tried to explain this is a poll tax, right? Because if you, as a man, aren't changing your name, this doesn't impact you. Who changes their name? Women. Like 99.9% of people who change their name for marriage are women. So if you have a
Right.
woman who's changed her name and she moves to a different state with her husband and she's like, okay, I'm going to register, like I want to update my voter registration to vote in Texas or whatever. And now she realizes she can't. She has to go get either a passport. She has to get further documentation to prove that she is who she says she is. In order to do that, that is a poll tax.
Mm-hmm.
It is a barrier to vote. It's a financial barrier to vote that impacts a certain group of people. It's not everybody has to do this. It's certain groups of people. And for whatever reason, these dudes on Facebook like did not want to acknowledge that that was a thing. I was told, I was stretching the truth, sweetheart. I always love when they add like sweetie or
Oh my God.
like it's
Oh
just
my
so
God.
weird. But it's just an
I mean,
odd thing. And
it's
Lily is making
sexist.
a good point. Lily's
Yeah.
making a very good point. She says trans people change their name. Of course. Like this
Yeah.
expands beyond women, but when you hear 69 million plus, that's how many
Yeah.
people could get knocked off the voter rolls. It's very clear to me, to your point, this is about suppression of the vote. It's about reducing the vote to a certain group, which would be male and probably, leaning conservative. And so they're trying anything that they can do at this point to further subjugate women, but also put themselves in the position of power because they don't like the way we're all voting. And to me,
Right.
it's so abhorrent. And it is scary. It really, this has been one of the things that I've been paying attention to and I feel very scared about.
I I think everyone should feel scared about it, because
Yes,
in a way, it's we're talking about a very specific issue, but this is actually just like one piece to a larger puzzle, in
that's
the
right.
sense that like the Republican Party wants to do everything possible to limit voter turnout.
That's
And
right.
so it's, you see it in this case here with the SAVE Act. You've seen it in places like Georgia, where they were like, if you give water to people
Mm,
standing in line, then that's illegal now. You're seeing it in different ways about like, oh, we have to like make sure that certain places over here, they don't have enough voting machines. Places over here, they
yep.
can't stay open for 24 hours, like we've seen in Texas. Like, oh, you want to do 24-hour voting? No, we can't do that. In these certain parts of the district, can't do that. Like, so they just
Certain
find
parts.
little certain parts. So they
Mm-hmm.
find certain areas that they can kind of strategically go after that are
Yes.
advantageous for them. This is never whatever they say in public is just whatever they feel like they have to say in order to paint it the right way. The
Yeah.
actual objective is, how can we lower voter turnout that are people who are likely to vote against us?
Yeah.
That's the game.
Not only is that the game, but it's like, I think they would prefer it if nobody was able to vote, that they get rid of this whole system. And so I think they're trying to, like, to your point, just chip away at whatever is left of our democracy. They're doing that through, throwing people in prisons in El Salvador for speaking out against government. They're doing it in
Right.
ways that, they're kidnapping students in broad daylight for being supporters of the Palestinian people. Like, they're doing whatever they can to scare us and to make us afraid to exercise our right to vote. And then you add this extra financial barrier when they know people are not doing well financially. Adding a few extra $100 is a lot of money to have to go and get a passport, and it takes time. So you're looking
Yeah,
at 6 months maybe to even get this thing.
right.
You could miss a deadline to register because, of course, you have to meet these deadlines. Why isn't there same day registration available? Like, that's insane to me. So to your point, I think there's a lot of sneakiness going on. But I think what really bothered me, and someone set it up here earlier, and I'm sorry I can't find who it is, but they basically were like, the Democrats, the four Democrats betrayed their party and their base. And to me, that is actually a worse offense than all the Republicans that voted in favor, because I know who the Republicans are. We know who you are. Your
Right.
fascist flag is flying. We get it. But like, to see any of the Democrats join their side, and especially on this, and one of them being a woman, that hurt me. That
She's the
like
most perplexing
hurt
for
me.
multiple reasons. Also because of where her district is, being
Mm-hmm.
out in Washington.
Yeah.
So very blue, very liberal area of the country, versus like some of the other Democrats were in, I guess you would say, more conservative districts in
Mm-hmm.
Texas and up in Maine. But that was, getting into a little bit of the weeds there. Natalie, I have found that also, I want to mention to you really quickly. I can't really see the chat, so if you're
Yeah.
able to see any of the
Oh, I
comments,
got you.
feel free to just cut me off at any time because I
I
can't
got you.
actually can't even see them rolling up. But should we go to our next topic?
Well, real quick, Lily
Okay.
also added that in Europe, all citizens are automatically registered to vote. They get a ballot mailed to their address, even if they live overseas. By default, you don't even have to like do that. It's a thing. And then someone has asked us if they want to, could we please talk about the 3 Afghani middle school girls who were assaulted by 20 of their classmates in Houston, Texas? One
I
girl was in the
actually only
hospital.
heard about that story just last night, and I haven't
Yes.
seen enough about it to be able to speak to it with
Yes.
conviction. But I mean, obviously, I'm against any kind of violence like that. But I mean, as far as
Right.
like being able to talk about the details of it, I just don't know the story well enough to talk about the details of it right now.
No, I agree. And I also just happened to see it. This is Platform for Change on my Instagram. I will say that it ties into some of the other things that we're talking about, because once again, this is all about othering and
Yeah,
this creating this sense of supremacy, white Christian nationalist supremacy. And to me, this factors right into what we just discussed about voting and voter suppression. And so they're creating this fear of the other, and they're allowing for violence against people who do not look like them, and then they're going to cry that there's some kind of bias against them. It's this persecuted majority BS that the Christians have always had cornered the market on, in my opinion. More to come on that topic, because I am going to do a Substack and I want to dig into what happened. But it's a hate crime, plain and simple. Nothing new
yeah,
there.
no
Yeah.
Islamophobia in America, nothing new there.
Ooh, no.
No.
What's been
Um,
on your top of mind?
the Trump administration is weighing drone strikes in Mexico.
Great.
Okay.
Like, why, Desmond?
Oh
Why?
man, I have so many feelings about this. Let me give you the details first, though.
Okay.
From our friends here at Ground News, talking about the Trump administration weighing drone strikes against Mexican drug cartels. According to 6 current and former U.S. officials familiar with the
Mm.
discussions, the plan is still in the early stages, which includes targeting cartel members and the infrastructure through surveillance-based precision strikes,
Mm.
possibly in co-op. Here's the kicker here:
Tell us.
possibly in cooperation with Mexico. Not definitely in cooperation with Mexico, but possibly in
Which means
cooperation with
not
Mexico.
in cooperation with
Yes.
Mexico.
So,
Shout out to
uh,
their badass leader, by the way. She's amazing.
Claudia Scheinbaum, I think is how you,
Yes.
yes. So she warned any unilateral action, stating that we reject any form of intervention or interference.
Mm.
Some U.S. officials support unilateral strikes as a last resort if joint operations are rejected. So basically, like, we'll do it even if you reject it. That's fun. Um, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who shouldn't have that job,
Ugh.
basically, they've both declined to rule out military options. Um, yeah,
Maybe they'll put
that's
it
where
in
we're
a
at
group
right now.
chat.
Maybe they're basically saying that former DEA agent Derek Malt said that the recent designation of the cartels as foreign terrorists expands the U.S. government's authority to, at some points, it's about the safety of our kids.
I'm so, you know what? off with that. I don't want to talk about kids and safety. I don't want to hear that ever come out of the mouths of Republicans as a justification for anything when you're over here slashing Medicaid and taking money out of children's cancer research. You can like shove that right up your ass. How about that? That's where I'm at. No, we're not
Let's
doing that.
let's not forget rolling back child labor laws in all these
Oh,
red
they
states.
love that. They're all
Yeah,
for it.
yeah,
And just the fact that we do not have clean air and clean water, just the fact that Trump's like, yeah, forever chemicals. That's cool. Let's roll back those regulations. Just the fact that we are bombing children in other parts of the world, like the don't come at me and say that you care about kids at all. The United States has never cared about children.
right.
If they
No,
did, we would have universal health care, we'd have clean air, clean water, we'd have living
right.
wage, we would have paid leave, we'd have childcare, education. I mean, come on. So once again, this goes back to they are setting up this agenda that supports this Christian, white, nationalist, fascist regime. The framing of this is all about, how big is yours? Like that's where we're at. And the idea that we're going to possibly send drones to Mexico for American safety when we know this is only going to ramp up violence, right? That this will only create more tension and more violence if we go on the offense and attack a nation that we've had like a coexistence with for a very long time that has not been overtly violent. Why are we trying to make violent borders with our neighbors over here? What do you think this is about?
Um, is it okay if I go on a little bit of a tirade here?
Tirade
Okay,
away,
because
baby.
tirade. They're talking about going to war.
Yeah,
Let's call it what it is. If
that's
any
it.
country said that they were going to drone strike America
Mm,
for their own safety, that is declaring war. There's no
listen.
getting around it. There's no getting around it. So in no circumstance will we ever allow anyone to drone strike Miami. And like, yeah, we think there's some people there who might
Right.
not like Egypt, so Egypt's gonna send some drones over there and bomb these folks in Miami. That would
Mm,
never play, right?
mm-mm.
So America's like, yeah, there's some people we don't like in Mexico, and whether you like it or not, we are going to attack them, and we don't care they say. Every time I hear precision strike, it
Oh,
just sounds like a joke to me because that's what they
yeah.
say, and that's what Israel says in Gaza. That's what we said in Afghanistan. That's what we said in Iraq. How many millions of people, that hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, are now dead due to precision targeted strikes? Okay,
Mm,
so I don't want to hear any of that. Like,
no.
this is full fledged talking about starting a war with a border country. Okay,
Yes.
like you think we have an immigration problem now? You're going to start attacking the country directly, next to us. And again, Mexico is a massive country. Over 100 million people live
Huge.
here.
Mm-hmm.
And these are all peaceful people for the most part. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, the cartels are a problem.
Sure.
And honestly, the president here, let me find her name again, Claudia Sheinbaum, she actually
Mm-hmm.
said that she was open to working with our government to do intelligence arrests and to have people
Mm-hmm.
like go in there and do like
Yeah.
coordinated efforts with their government because they do recognize that the cartels are a problem. So this isn't not about like saying that the cartels are not a problem. It's just about saying that you can't just go into somebody else's country and start attacking them whenever you see fit. That's not how this is supposed to work, any way, shape, or form. And so we are seeing this aggressive, like imperialist kind of like agenda from Trump when
Mm.
it comes to Mexico, with Canada talking about trying to like redraw the maps up there, saying like, oh, I think the lines of demarcation are correct. We're gonna just take some of your territory and call it America now. Talking about trying to like annex Greenland from Denmark. Now Denmark's in a tizzy. They're thinking about actually like increasing the amount of people who they're conscripting into their military because they think they might actually have to militarily defend Greenland from the United States. Talking about like we want to go out and have strikes
Whew.
against Iran right now. We said that if they don't accept our nuclear deal, we are going to bomb them. We're talking about putting a ground invasion force in Yemen and in Gaza while we're also drone striking Somalia. Like, Trump ran on being a pro peace,
Yep.
anti war president.
That's
And in
right.
less than 3 months, he has fear mongered just as much, if
Yeah.
not more, than George W. Bush did. It
Yeah.
is
And that's
insane.
saying something.
Yes.
Let's say
Like,
so.
it really is. And so, like,
Well,
I am terrified about this story.
yeah. I mean, Trump's an idiot. Like, we have to
Yeah.
just acknowledge that first. And I know people are like, oh, no, he's truly an idiot. And what he has done is keep himself out of jail by running and winning this presidency. And so now that he's there, the people that paid for him to be there, they want their their money, so to speak. And if you think
Yeah.
about it, all the billionaires that backed him, they all have money with defense contracts. They all, have stocks in weapons manufacturing. I mean, this is good for business. War is good for business. Peace is not, right? When you're talking
Right.
about the level of money that we're discussing. And so for me, when I hear this, I'm not surprised by any of this. I knew Trump would never be a peacetime president, but what I do think
Right.
is a little hilarious about this is this idea that America thinks that we have this big standing army ready to go at any moment. We don't. Actually, a lot of our army is like within the National Reserve. We also are spread very thin. We have a lot of bases all over the world. So we actually don't have the ability to just have all of these multiple strikes happening as at one time. It's just not like feasible if you think about it from a logistics standpoint. And I'm not a military expert, but I can tell you I'd do a better job running shit than Pete Hegseth would because I know that much. He doesn't seem to know that much, right? So
No.
it's just interesting that they're choosing to set us up for failure, is what they're doing, because there's no way we're going to be able to manage this many types of conflict and have the manpower and the capabilities, especially when they've rooted out DEI all over our military, and they're trying to get, all of these incredible diverse people to leave said military. Who's going to
Right.
be working in this incredible complex that they have? So for me, it's just like, this is so dumb. It's ill thought out. It's poorly planned. It doesn't make any sense. And guess what? Mexico has weapons too. And they could easily hit us just like we can hit them. This is not some far off threat that is a different beast. This is literally in our backyard. And someone just added, oh, sorry, they were just saying that they're enjoying listening to us. Well, thank you. We're enjoying chatting with all of you. And if you've
Thank you.
just joined us, I'm Natalie and this is Desmond, and we're talking about the news of the moment, and we're discussing the Mexico drone strikes that Trump wants to inflict upon them. But to me, this feels like Trump has a lot of people to pay back, and they got to get that war machine going so they can make that
Yeah.
money. That's what this feels like. Very transactional.
Can we just naturally go to my other topic
Let's
really
do
quick? Because
it.
it just feels like it's just
It's
kind
a
of just
good
hanging
one.
right there. Yeah.
Yes.
Donald Trump has announced that they are going to implement the first ever $1 trillion budget
Mm.
for the Defense Department for 1 year. The next
Desmond,
one.
can I
$1
just
trillion
can I just say this before you give people the lowdown on the
for
details?
1 year.
1 year, we can't get healthcare in this country. We can't
No.
get infrastructure or high-speed trains. We can't get any of the things that we were talking about, paid leave, any
Nope.
of that. But we got money for this, and somehow simultaneously we have money to give Greenland's residents 10,000 each a year. Basically UBI, universal basic income, which I talk about all the time because I'm like, when are we going to get that? Right? Why don't we have that in the richest nation of the world? Why don't I get a check every month just because I live here and work here? Like, but we can do it for them. What is this insane thing where it's like, it's okay to have money go out anywhere else but to ourselves, but to our own citizens for things that we need here? How have they been managed to twist everybody's brains to think that it can go anywhere else except here? Makes me insane. Makes me feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Well, when you see the amount of money
Yeah.
that the billionaire class injects into the Daily Wire and to
Mm.
Charlie Kirk's foundation and to
Mm.
Fox News and into places like into the Joe Rogan experience and into
Oof.
our friend Russell Brand, who we'll be talking about later, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes a lot more clear how they're able to convince so many people of this. So
Yes.
what was funny to me, though, is that during the Biden administration, it was the
Mm-hmm.
right who was constantly saying that, hey, we need to be America first. We need to be not involved in these foreign wars. We need to not be giving money over to countries like Israel. That was actually a really strong growing
Yes,
sentiment
it
on the right
was.
last year. And they were
Mm-hmm.
talking about how we need to just be bringing all the troops home. Trump ran on bringing the troops home, on not starting new wars, not starting new conflicts. He could feel the energy in his own base. What's funny to me is how quickly his base just basically just falls in line whenever
Yeah.
dear leader decides to change his mind. They fall in line. It's pretty funny that way. I cannot get over
Mm.
what this all means. Okay, so Trump was asked in the Oval Office about this. He kind of went on. He didn't say too much about it other than he's like, oh, well, it's never been done before, and I'll be so proud to be the first to do it. And we're going to invest in the military in a big, big way.
Like
And
we've never
you
invested in the military in this country.
Right. And I'm sure this is kind of like a broken talking point at this point, but like everyone kind of, I think, knows on some level that the United States spends more money on their military than
Yes.
the next 10 countries combined.
Combined. Mm-hmm.
Combined. So
Yep.
it is an insane figure that
Mm-hmm.
when we think about it, we don't even know where the money is being spent. The
No.
Pentagon has failed 7 audits in a row. They
Yep.
can't even account for where the money's going.
They're not
They
even
don't know.
trying.
Right. And this is the same time where you have, members of the military who are still needing to apply for benefits because they're not
Mm-hmm.
getting paid enough. When they come home, they're not getting the services they need from the VA. Some of them find themselves being homeless on the street. So
Mm.
you can't tell me that this is about actually, protecting the troops or making sure that they have what they need or taking care of them. We do anything but that. This is about the
Listen.
war machine. This is about making sure that Boeing gets their money. It's about making sure that Lockheed Martin gets their money. This is about making sure
Mm.
that all the defense contractors who live in Northern Virginia, the most rich counties in the entire country,
That
that
part.
those people get their money every year. And they keep increasing the number year over year. This was happening in Biden's administration.
Oh yeah.
Pentagon asked for a certain number, he
Yeah.
gave them more. And now Trump not wanting to be outdone is like, I will give you even more. So
Yeah.
this is a systemic problem, but Trump, of course, wants to take it to a new level. And
Yeah.
that's really the problem here because it's not so much of a defense budget as it is more or
Mm-mm.
less like an imperialism budget. And
Yes.
so it kind of just ties back into our last story. They need more money because it looks like they want to ramp up military intervention.
Yes.
Mexico, Greenland, possibly Canada, possibly Iran, possibly Gaza, into
Mm.
Yemen. They're talking about
Mm.
taking the Panama Canal back from Panama. Like, this is an insane amount of warmongering coming from Donald Trump. And I am truly frightened that if we are not essentially out in the streets every single week anymore, that they're just going to take it as an excuse to be able to go out and do whatever they want.
Um, I couldn't agree more. And it got me to thinking sort of like the larger picture here because the demographics in this country are changing. People's,
Yeah.
I think, philosophies on war have changed over the past several decades. We've seen war. What is it good for? Not much other than lining the pockets of the already very elite and wealthy. And so
Yeah.
I think this all very much aligns with we got to suppress the vote. We've got to get rid of DEI because we don't want anyone with a differing perspective sharing their thoughts because this, once again, is advancing a very specific agenda. And that
Yeah.
agenda is that of white, male, Christian, fascist power. And I know I sound like a broken record, but identity politics is infused into all of this. And if we don't start recognizing that and how this all interplays, I think we're never going to be able to solve it because America, we have a racism problem. America, we have a patriarchal nightmare in front of us. We are xenophobic. Like we have to deal with these larger issues. And we also have to address the runaway capitalist society that we're living in that has created these monopolies where you have now all of this wealth and power concentrated in the hands of very, very few people. And that kind of plays into the
Or,
last thing I wanted to bring up.
yeah, I
If
think it
you're
does really well.
if you have time for like maybe just like one more
I
topic.
definitely do. I definitely
Okay.
do. Yep.
This is a little pop culture-y for us, but I think it's good. It's good to get out of our box a little bit. It very much ties into everything. And it's about Russell Brand. And I don't know about you guys, but I was in no way surprised when I heard this story. My thought was, well, we're just figuring this out now. According to the BBC and many other news outlets this week, Russell Brand was charged with rape and sexual assault. And so if that conversation is difficult for you, please join us, another time, because I don't want anybody to be triggered by what I'm about to read. But he's been charged with rape, indecent assault, sexual assault, and this is over the years between 1999 and 2005. It's related to
Oh,
4 separate women. He's been interviewed and interrogated multiple times by police. And in a new video just posted this week on X, naturally his platform of choice, Brand said, what I never was a rapist. I've never engaged in non-consensual activity. He said, I'm now going to have the opportunity to defend these charges in court, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. And there's a lot of women coming forward. What's interesting and what I want to tie back, because this talks to a larger issue around incels and the Joe Rogan experience and all of these, men that sort of hide behind this idea, is Russell Brand, this is on NBC News, is going to be speaking about free speech at a college, Florida. And this was after the rape charges came out. And the new college of Florida said, this is a reflection of our commitment to civil discourse. Like, sometimes I just can't get over where we are. And there is so
yeah.
much to say about this, but I just want to add that Russell Brand really tried to rebrand himself as a wellness expert, as a new age
Yeah.
guru. And I find it fascinating. There's photos of him with RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz and all these grifters. And I find it really interesting that if you go far enough left and you go far enough right, you meet in this anti-vax incel hellscape where wellness culture thrives, but in this very perverted way, where trad wives exist and they're okay with this patriarchal stuff that harms them. It's
Yeah.
weird. He's with Katy Perry, who has said a lot of out of pocket things. It's just it's concerning to me, because we're now in a place where not only are these men not having any repercussions, like the Me Too movement didn't really do much, but now they're almost being centered as victims. Like, this is wild,
Yeah.
Desmond.
Yeah.
Wild. So does
It,
this
it
also make sense at the same time that we get $1 trillion budget for war? Of course it does.
I think that there's a weird intersection that goes on here that is very alarming to me. Because I think to a degree, what we're seeing in this like right wing media sphere
Mm-hmm.
is really similar to how Trump kind of has risen and established power himself.
Mm-hmm.
So someone like Russell Brand, right? You're thinking to yourself, like, how does someone like this actually captivate people, generate the
Mm-hmm.
audience that he does, elicit these reactions he's getting from people where he's being treated almost like a victim? I think there's kind of like I would say, there's almost like a pattern here to how these people go ahead and generate their following. They give you something that on its face is actually
Yeah.
truthful, you
Sure.
know? And then from there, once they are able to kind of expose something that they think is actually truth, like legitimately truthful,
Mm-hmm.
from there they can kind of just like drag you into every other crazy ideology that they have. And
Yes.
I think that that's how these things get lost, right? Like for instance, with Trump, not to get too far off topic here, but with Trump, he would say that the country is broken, to which I think
Mm-hmm.
everyone to some degree feels that way.
Sure.
But then once he kind of has you in that moment, because he's willing to say that, other politicians maybe are not to an extent, then he will tell you about all of his ridiculous ideas about how he's going to fix it. And they make no sense whatsoever.
Mm.
Now, with like someone like Russell Brand and getting involved in like the wellness machine, right? I think it is actually very, real and to me obvious to say that there are a lot of things wrong with like our food supply, with
Sure.
like, with how we have our water, like like, thinking about like maybe how certain maybe prescription drugs are over pushed by doctors. I think that there is plenty of evidence to support that. I think that you can see all the different chemical companies in our country
Mm-hmm.
and how they are dumping chemicals into our food system that shouldn't be there. That should
Sure.
not be there. I think a lot of people agree with that. But then once you kind of establish that and you build credibility for yourself, then you can kind of take it off into any different direction you can go into, right? And I think that influencers like Russell Brand have created a giant living for themselves that way by being truth tellers, right?
Yeah.
And so when you have allegations come out about
Mm,
rape, about sexual assault, about sexual violence, then you kind of have insulated yourself in your community because people look at you as a truth teller and an
that's
arbiter
right.
of, like what's right and what's wrong. And so you can kind of hide behind that cloak a little bit because you've been telling the truth and now they're coming after you,
Mm,
right? And I think that that is what we see so often on the right is where they can
yes.
find one thing to kind of like talk about that is legitimately true and then use that to justify all of their other bullshit. And then if
Yep.
anything ever comes back their way, they can act like a victim and say, hey, I'm being attacked because I told the truth one time. That's why they're coming after me right now. I'm the victim.
I think that is such a great summation of what we were just talking, and it goes all the way back to the first conversation in my mind about the SAVE Act, because it's a lot easier to be on the right than it is the left, because the right, everything is black and white. To your point, like, I'm a truth
Yeah.
teller. That's
Right.
it. I told you the truth. And now I'm being attacked. I'm the victim here. But on the left, it's like, we know these issues in reality are complex, they're
Yeah.
nuanced, they're gray. And so
Right.
it's a lot harder to be a truth teller when you go, these things about this are true, but also, and also, these other things don't fit in to that space, but these things
Right.
also are important to understand. People don't like that. We also, we've lost a lot of our ability to critically think. And I think, much like with what you're talking about, when you have someone say to you, I have the answers, I know the secret, people want
Yeah.
to feel connected to that. They want to feel a part of something. And that's kind of how cults start, which is why I think you see a
A
lot
little
of
bit.
that behavior, especially in wellness organizations and in wellness
Yeah.
spaces. Because when we think about the large systemic issues, it's so overwhelming and we don't feel like we have any control. But when you think about, oh, in this wellness space, if you take this supplement, you're taking back control of your health. It's out of the hands of the pharmacies and the doctors, those people
Right.
that are
Right.
are not there for you. We're here for you. Here's the thing that'll fix you. And it becomes an individualistic problem instead of a systemic problem. And once again, that goes right back to white supremacy and patriarchy. You put the onus on the individual instead of looking at it from a collective experience. I remember reading this one thing that talked about how perfection at its root is a white supremacist ideology, this search for perfection. And so I've really tried to change my own personal philosophy. Instead of perfection, I want progress, because there is
Mm-hmm.
no such thing. And chasing that idea of perfection is putting me into a frame that is very hierarchical and very dangerous for us as a collective. And then one more person before we wrap up. Lily wanted to share this. Lily Pond's really our star here today. She's really
Thank you,
shared a
Lily.
lot of thoughts. So thank you, Lily. And she says, yes, the Health Ranger on YouTube was the entrance for my ex to get indoctrinated about the conspiracy theory, which got him to support Trump. And I think that really plays into exactly what we're
It's a
saying.
pipeline.
It's a pipeline.
Yeah,
It's a
it really
pipeline.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because to a degree, it's really pervasive because it is unfortunately rooted in a little bit of truth, like in the
Yes.
sense that like there are certain problems in our country that are not talked about enough and that are
That's right.
not being addressed with enough. And you see, to a degree, there are certain problems that you see both Democrats and Republicans kind of like brushing off like it's not that big of a deal. And if anyone's willing to be like, hey, you see that over there? That's a problem. I'm going to talk
Yeah.
about it. Then they have you. Then basically they've established trust with you. And
That's
then they'll
right.
start talking about 10 other topics. But because they got you with that first topic, now you've
Ooh,
opened yourself up to listen to them with every other topic.
can I say something that's kind of sinister, but it totally plays into what you're saying? A lot
Hmm.
of abusers do this. Like,
Oh,
they
talk
establish
about it.
themselves in positions of authority in community.
Yeah,
Priests, principals, police officers, mayors. These are celebrities. These are people in
yeah,
positions of power and authority that are looked at as do-gooders, as community leaders, and they are abusers. many
Mm-hmm.
times. That's where a lot of these people fit into community, and they do that on purpose. And so, to go to your point, it's like they're creating a sense of not only authority, but it's very parental. It's very fatherly. I'm the head
Yeah.
of this experience. It goes back to that hierarchical energy. And then once they have you, they can do what they want to do to remain in that position of power and control, which is really what sexual assault is all about, which is what these larger grifts are all about. All of this is the same energy, exerting your will onto someone else through coercion and or violence. And that's what I think we
Right.
need to start ripping apart. And that's why I'm enjoying doing this, because
Yeah.
I think this allows us to dig into some of this and start to poke holes in the incel spaces. And so
Yeah.
thank you to everybody for joining us. Desmond and I are going to keep doing these, and we appreciate you guys tuning in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I don't know if it's going to be the same time every week or if it's going to be, the same day, but it's something that we're hoping to do once a week at least, if not more than
Mm-hmm.
that in the future. I'm going to be posting these videos to YouTube as well. So if you want to watch them back that way, they'll be on YouTube. This should also be on our Substacks as individual posts, I think, as
Mm-hmm.
well. So there'll be multiple ways to kind of come back and watch these. So yeah, and if anyone has ideas for future topics that you're interested in, you can always send me a DM, send Natalie a DM here on Substack to pitch topics for the future. We'd definitely be interested in that. And we are both on Instagram for those who don't know where else to follow us at. So I recommend checking us out on Instagram.
That's right. And I always say at the end of my Substacks and all my stuff, until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. And I mean that. So I hope everybody stays well and stays safe, and lives to fight another day, because we got to fight. That's right. It's always good being with you, Desmond.
Yeah, good to see you too, Natalie. I'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate you.
All right,
Bye.
see you later.